Good morning, and welcome to Unfiltered Vision News. Well, good morning, and welcome to Unfiltered Vision News, bringing you the news unfiltered Monday through Friday. Thank you guys so much for joining me here on our Monday recap. And with that, let's get into honoring God with our body. So, God, please guard our mind and our thoughts. God, help me to fix my thoughts on what is true and honorable and right and pure and lovely and admirable. So I would think about things that are excellent and worthy of praise. God, please protect our ears and help us listen to your voice. God, help me to be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry. God, please protect my eyes from sin's damage. God, I make a covenant with my eyes not to look lustfully. God, please speak life over my mouth. God, set a guard over my mouth. Lord, keep watch over the doors of my lips. God, please help my hands to serve generously. God, help me to do good to everyone, and especially to those who belong to our family in the faith. God, please protect our reproductive organs and help us to honor you, God, with purity. God, help me to honor you with my body. And God, please protect our feet as we walk along your path. God, let your word be a lamp for my feet and a light on my path. And if you join us on a regular basis in the morning, that is something that we, you know, try to do every morning. Sometimes I forget. Sometimes I do get into the news and I'm just like, let's go. And I'm like, I need to stop and remember to reflect on God's will and purpose for us in our lives, right? Because that's part of the reason why I'm doing this. Because a lot of times news is told from a perspective, but sometimes I think as Christians it's really hard for us to digest it and then really understand it and then really know what to pray about because it can be frustrating. It can. We're human. I'm just saying. So we are going to, first of all, get into our topics on X. So one of the first topics that came up, let me increase this a little bit for those on the other side of the screen. I think that's a little bit better. Just a little bit. Um, so there's Costco break rooms charge employees for snacks despite company profits. Well, that's why they have those profits. They're they're getting it on all ends. Now, I did work for a company that they just supply us with snacks and, beverages and things of that nature. And the reason why they did that is because of the nature of the business that I was in at that time, the company. And because people were, I don't want to say they were working 24 hours a day, but there were some positions that had to work at night, right? Or just during odd hours of the day. And so they would graciously enough, supply us with like little things like salads and, healthy items. But it was just a perk. of being part of the company. So, yeah, I do find it sad that Costco is doing that. Costco, come on, you need to do better. You can afford it. I'm just saying. Um, Now there's been fights by youth cut short, Columbia Juneteenth fest. Um, and this is sad, and I hate to say I'm not surprised, but hey, this is parenting. Part of this is parenting. It is not on the general public in a sense. This goes back to home training, but this also, you know, goes back to we got babies raising babies. People cease to forget about that. There was a boom in teen pregnancy. I'm not excusing people's behavior, but we have to be realistic about what we're dealing with. Now, and the last one, subcontractors protest unpaid bills at the Obama Center opening. This one's interesting because, as you can see, it says subcontractors, not the contractors, but subcontractors. And during the speech that Michelle Obama gave in the opening, she thanked the contractors, everybody that worked on the project top down. And you have these subcontractors protesting. You're like, well, that something's not making sense. Well, the contractors got paid, but the subcontractors didn't. That means the contractors are responsible for paying the subcontractors. So if I get a government contract, so to speak, and I'm working on the Obama facility, right? And I get paid X amount of money, but I subcontracted part of the contract that I was awarded out for people to lay concrete, for example. But I got the money, but I didn't give it to the subcontractor. That's on me. That's not on the Obama Foundation. And I think that's what's happening. So it really comes back to the contractors that actually got the bids and they were awarded, right, this opportunity to work on the Obama Foundational Center, right? But they didn't pay the people that were hired to do the work. That's sad and it's disgusting. And the contractors, they need to, the subcontractors need to go after them. They need to sue them. They need to get their monies because they were robbed, in my opinion. But they were robbed by the contractors. That shouldn't be a reflection on the Obama Foundation because they gave them the money. But it kind of gets lost in the sauce when people don't really stop and take the time to look at, oh, yeah, that happened. It did. And while we were talking, it totally updated. Debate revives over property taxes as government lease on homes. Yeah, that's going to be a big debate. And then Gabbard declassifies the Fauci Wuhan research documents on her final day. Oh, yeah, she dropped that whole dumpster fire. It was really interesting to see. We're going to get into that a little bit. Now, I wanted to check out all sides really quick. So, Trump orders immediate repairs to the reflecting pool and police arrest 5, including a U.S. Olympian. I don't know what's going on, but they cleaned it up and then people were dumping stuff in it. And I'm just like, really? Get it together. Um, and then talks with Iran and Switzerland. Iran says it closed her moves over Israel's Lebanon campaign. I don't know what needs to happen, but and my husband and I were talking about this. Look, we need to back out. I don't know what needs to happen, but at this juncture, President Trump, if you're listening, there's no I wouldn't be upset if you said enough. Iran, we're going to focus on dealing with you. We're going to focus on dealing with the Strait. But Israel, we can no longer partner with you because whatever your issue is strictly with Iran and Lebanon, we can no longer partner with you and walk away from that, right? They can still be an ally, but we don't have to partner with them in every single conflict that they have respectfully, right? And that's where it should be left at. If this is a bone that you, in my opinion, Israel, if this is what you want to do, fine. But the United States is no longer going to be a part of it. We have to get things done over here with Iran so the Strait of Hormuz is open, so that trade is going better, so that we're functioning. Because unfortunately, because of globalism and the way things have been done, it's they've really messed up, in my opinion, the supply chain because we've gotten too dependent in different places and different areas on different things. But there's a way to fix it. Respectfully walk away. Just respectfully walk away. Israel, you can do whatever you want to do, but don't drag us into it. That's just my opinion on that one. Now, Iran, of course, files FIFA complaint over U.S. travel restrictions during the World Cup. Well, what did you think was going to happen? Really? This is a whole, it's a mess. Because again, it still ties back to, unfortunately, our relationship with Israel, and there's travel bans with Iran right now because of everything that's going on in the Strait of Hormuz. Like this whole thing is a mess. It is a mess. Now, Juneteenth, 2026, a day of activism or observance, which I find interesting. Juneteenth has been recognized officially since 2021. I remember going to a Juneteenth celebration back in 1988. So it's been celebrated for a long time because my girlfriend, she was actually from Houston, Texas. And so she introduced me to it. So I've known about it for, decades now, but I just find it interesting how it can look like a day of activism or observance. You know what? We should respectfully go, wow, this is a good commemorative day to say, you know what? This is when we know slavery was shut down, at least being recognized as shut down. Now, you know, there's still the opinion out there that if it's truly gone, why is it still in the 13th Amendment? And why is it disproportionately used against people, right? So that they can have slave labor in prisons. But that's a whole nother sidebar conversation for another time. Now, in Tennessee, they're requiring proof of citizenship, English proficiency to obtain a driver's license. Shocker. They should. What are we talking about? If you are not a citizen of this country, no, you shouldn't be driving here. You shouldn't be driving here. But that's what they're doing. And then what's in the U.S. Iran Memorandum of Understanding, we'll find out later. Hopefully, they'll actually get to the table to sign it because, my goodness, it is the worst. It's almost like somebody who doesn't know how to drive a stick shift. And if you've ever driven with somebody who does not know how to drive a stick shift, it's just that jerking back and forth. To me, that's what this seems like. And then this really sad headline is police shoot a 1-year-old in Mississippi during a shoplifting investigation. Shoplifting and a 1-year-old loses their life. It's it's just we live in a chaotic world, and these are the things we need to pray about, and these are the topics that I'm bringing out to you guys. So, because I know there's some prayer warriors out there, and you are exactly who we need. Now, the next thing I did want to get into, I wanted to get into what Tulsi Gabbard had dropped on the 18th, which was Thursday. And it was interesting, on her way out, bomb dropped on Fauci, right? So I wanted everybody to look at his grant of clemency by President Biden, right? And it says for any offenses against the United States. Okay, wow. So that's all of us, right? Which he may have committed or taken part in during the period of January 1st, 2014 through the date of this pardon, which would have been January 19th or 20th of 2025. Okay. Because it was done literally the day of the day before the inauguration, which was really interesting. Or in any manner related to his service as director of the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases, which you'll hear the NIAID. You'll hear that name in concert with him. As a member of the White House Coronavirus Task Force, which we know he was a part of that in 2020, or the White House COVID-19 response team, or as chief medical advisor to the president. The one thing I didn't see in here, and I'm not sure if it was going to be covered, was the NIH, which he was over, the National Institute of Health. I didn't see that mentioned here, but in my opinion, for them to outline these specific tasks or institutes that he was over during that time. I'm like, okay, you listed these, but did you really list all of them, right? So here's his letter from the president. Here's what everyone is having a fit about because they're not sure if it was actually signed by Biden or if it was auto-penned. Those are still questions that a lot of people have and are bringing up. Now, I also wanted to bring up his pardon, right, that was done. And this was done on, let me scroll up, January 19th, 2025. So I said right before that. And you notice that the Biden family, Francis, James, Sarah, John T., and Valerie, they also were pardoned on 2014 till the day. I was like, why was 2014 the magic number? It was weird, right? Because that was during Barack's presidency. Biden was the vice president at that time. So why that? Why that year? That's what's really interesting to me. So it says for any offenses. So pretty much this right here follows the letter, right? But again, the NIH was not mentioned. And the reason why I keep bringing up the NIH is because it was a part of the Wuhan virus that was talked about. Not only was he the director of the NIAID, he was also over the NIH, but the NIH isn't in here. So was he pardoned for that or was he not? Because you listed these all specifically, but you didn't mention that one. Again, what I find fascinating. Okay, so here is what Tulsi Gabbard had mentioned. Let me make this a little bit bigger for you guys. Hopefully that helps. So it says before the COVID-19 pandemic, Anthony Fauci, as head of the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases, NIAID, provided millions of U.S. taxpayer dollars to fund dangerous gain of function research on bat coronaviruses at the Wuhan Institute of Virology, work which is now widely viewed as the source of the unintentable lab leak that sparked the pandemic. So this is kind of like the cornerstone of this is what happened, right? Because a lot of people were like, when did this happen? Why did this happen? But the other word about this is the gain of function. Now, if anybody remembers, everybody was like, yeah, this gain of function. And he specifically told Congress, no, there was not any gain of function research, which I find interesting. And this is why I find it interesting, but you guys can go back and read this letter. For the sake of time, I'm just going to go back to a little bit of digging that I did. And I said, can a pardon be reversed if the White House was part of the crime? No. A presidential pardon generally cannot be reversed, even if the White House or the president was involved or or complicit in the underlying crime. The reason why I asked that, because like I said, 2014, Biden was the vice president. So what did he know? When did he know it? Right? Now, I said that the question is reference to Fauci and the auto pen. Also, what did the Biden administration know and was there a cover up? Yes, this refers to the Biden preemptive pardon. Okay, that was pretty much my question, right? It was a broad pardon covering any potential federal offenses from January of 2014 onward. Again, a weird date related to Fauci's role at the NIAID, the White House Coronavirus Task Force, or as a chief medical advisor. Again, very specific, very narrow, but again, didn't talk about the NIH. Okay. So we're going on, moving on, because I did have another question. I know I had all these questions. I said, I find it strange that the party went back to 2014. There wasn't a pandemic then. Why is it dated back to 2014? So the 2014 start date for Fauci's pardon was chosen to broadly cover his oversight of the NIAID and NIH funding decisions related to gain of function research, particularly grants involving EcoHealth Alliance and the Wuhan Institute of Virology, issues that predate COVID-19 pandemic by years. So what was going on? Did y'all know that you were going to drop this? Did you know? Right? What did you know? In again, 2014, in my opinion, very random, but then very specific. Right? So in October 2014, the Obama administration, via the White House of Science and Technology, imposed a moratorium pause on US government funding for certain gain of function research on potential pandemic pathogens. So in influenza, SARS, MERS, right? So he put in a pause. That's what Obama did. That was in October, not January, October, right? And there was a response to lab safety incidents and biosecurity concerns. So that means there could have been potential leaks. Now, this is back in 2014. The pandemic happened in 2020. So there's a whole 6-year period, right? So Fauci, a longtime NIAID director, was involved in NIH policies and funding during and after this pause. So critics, including congressional investigators like Senator Rand Paul and House Oversight, allege that the NIAID continued or effectively supported related research through EcoHealth Alliance grants to study bat coronaviruses in China, including work with Shi Zilingyi at the Wuhan Institute of Virology, a key 2014 era grant to EcoHealth focused on bat corona surveillance and potential emergence risk. So, all right, the pause was lifted in 2017. Now, at this point, President Trump's in office, right? So allegations include whether certain experiments met the GOF definition, potential violations of the pause, transparency issues, and later ties to COVID-19 origins debates, right? So it's like, okay, I found a lot of that interesting. So I said, didn't Fauci state that there wasn't any gain of function research? He said it repeatedly, like on repeat. Yes, Dr. Fauci repeatedly stated under oath that the NIH and the NIAID has not ever and does not now fund, keyword, fund gain of function research in the Wuhan Institute of Virology. You guys just saw what I read to you. So he completely lied. Completely. Now it's interesting because this research shows the NIH and the NIAID tied together because the NIH was the funding mechanism. The NIAID was the actual, they took the funding and then they went forth with the gain of function research. Just saying, I will have this for you guys so we can get into it, absolutely. And good morning, everyone. Oh, y'all just chatting it up here in the chat. Thank you guys so much for joining me, Henry and in Harden and Bud McKenzie. He says, you are into something. Keep digging. They're telling on themselves. They are. It's almost like the more they keep talking, the more this stuff comes out. I'm like, wait a minute. Are you sure? Are you sure you want to put that out there like that? I don't know if you want to do that. I don't know if you really want to do that. But yeah, he lied. He lied under oath to Congress. But wait, not that there's more. He was pardoned for all. Yeah, that's the thing. And he was pardoned all the way back to 2014 when all of this stuff started. The pause didn't happen until 2017. So they were doing gain of function research. And he said it was never happening. But he said funding it. Does not now and does not fund. Not that they weren't doing it, doesn't fund it. Like I said, two totally different conversations. And I just really thought it was fascinating. As I said, I noticed that other pardons were granted specific to 2014. Why is 2014 so significant? So the 2014 start date appears consistently across multiple Biden preemptive pardons. Fauci, General Mark Milley, and the Biden family members because it aligns with the onset of activities that critics and investigators have targeted for scrutiny. So somebody brought up 2014 and they were like, okay, we got to go all the way back there. Last year was 2025. So 11 years. So you went back 11 years to make sure nobody else could go back that far and say, hey, you did this here. You're not covered for that. So if they find anything in 2013, everybody's like belly up on this, in my opinion, or 2012. Pick a year prior to 2014. But it's very telling that a lot of this nonsense happened within that time. You got Hunter Biden, the family pardons, right? Biden framed them as protection from politically motivated probes into family finances, but opponents view the date as covering the core period of alleged influence and peddling schemes. What I see it as a cover up for a lot of this stuff that happened with the pandemic, in my opinion. It all ties together because somebody implemented it and somebody made money off of it. Again, NIH is they were funding NIAID, so that means they were probably getting grants and donations and different things like that. So who was giving this money to the NIH? Investigate that, right? So the gain of function research timeline, as noted previously, marks the Obama era moratorium on certain gain of functions, not all of it, certain. So studies on potential pandemic pathogens. This is when NIH, NIAID funding decisions for EcoHealth Alliance, right, came under intense retrospective scrutiny. Allegations involved whether work contained in ways that skirted the pause, transparency issues, and links to broader COVID origins debates, right? And the last thing that I find ultra fascinating about all of this, the Obamas weren't pardoned. They weren't even mentioned. But a lot of this happened under the Obama presidency. Yeah, like I said, so I find it fascinating. Now, this last video that I want to play for you guys, this is the speech or part of the speech that Michelle Obama gave.
Toot, Gramps, you are a tribute to their love. They are up there grinning and hugging today because you never forgot who you are.
Let me take it back just a little bit. Okay, right there.
You made the hardest job in the world look like a walk in this beautiful park. Your mother, Toot, Gramps, you are a tribute to their love. They are up there grinning and hugging today because you never forgot who you are.
It's interesting. She says your mother and then of Toots Grants. So I guess that must be his dad, but they didn't have any pictures of him with his father because then she says they're smiling at you. So I was like, okay. Like I said, I found it fascinating that mom was there with the picture with her son, but you never see pictures of him with his dad. You never really see his dad mentioned. It's always the mom, the single mom that raised him, the single mom, the single mom. But he did have a stepdad. He did have a dad. I mean, obviously, we're on the planet here, unless we did some, in vitro. And I'm not sure if that was happening back then. But I'm just saying, there was a dad there. And I just find it interesting that they did not have any pictures really highlighted of him and his father. So, again, like I said, I just found it interesting. But that's just me. But thank you so much for joining me here on Unfiltered Vision News on our Monday recap. We'll be back tomorrow with Tell It All Tuesday. So remember, stay well, stay focused, and stay unfiltered. We'll see you in the next one.